right, welcome to That's Growth Ops, where fireside warmth meets the sharp insights of operations experts. Join us for candid conversations that dive deep into growth operations, from the latest in account-based marketing to innovative strategies for growth. Now, today we have a couple of guests joining us. We have Katrina Horn back for another episode. Thank you for coming back.
The people have spoken.
The people have spoken. Episode 5 was killer. You need to, if you haven't listened to that, go listen to it. And we're also joined with another expert from growth, Jason Gless, HubSpot certified trainer, and the king of virtual backgrounds, except not today.
For sure. That is for sure.
That's a virtual USPS store. Guys, what are you talking about? That's great. It's interactive.
It's great. I love it.
Mail over here and everything.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Why don't, Jason, you haven't had a chance to really introduce yourself because it's your first time here. Why don't you tell us a bit about you, your role at Growth, what you love doing, all that fun jazz.
Yeah, cool. I'm not distracted at all. I was completely prepared for this. So, name's Jason. I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I live here, so that's pretty cool. I've been in HubSpot for, I don't know, maybe a decade in some capacity. Either as a user, administrator, whatever it may be. So found the growth team some while back and absolutely love the team. It's been a lot of fun. I guess I'm kind of a solutions architect / whatever the team needs. So, it's what I do. I don't know. It's me.
Would you like a more defined title? This is not a scripted question.
You can call me janitor for all I care. You can call me whatever you want.
You can call me Al. Okay, that's the last time I sang, but
you can call me anything you want.
Happy Wednesday.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I usually have digital backgrounds because all my time in the summer is not spent in the basement where my office is. So it's nice and cool down here. But when I have free time, I work outside because it's not snowing. When the snow flies, then I work in the basement. You guys are all just going to have to deal with it.
We'll get you out of the basement as soon as we can, but the people have just got to hear from you. Since you've joined Growth, Jason, you have led, either on purpose or not on purpose, a really big change our company has had of just, I think, really being able to speak to and work in more complex HubSpot and just other systems conversations. So I'm sure I've complimented you sometime in the past, but now it'll be recorded for the world to hear. Thank you for joining the team, and thank you for doing such a great job.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Unscripted.
All right.
That makes it feel a lot less unscripted, Rich.
I've been wanting to play with the media board a bit more. All right. So this week, it's a short week. Typically, we record on Fridays. We're going a little off the cuff here today and recording on a Wednesday because we've got you Americans have July 4th and 5th coming up, Independence Day. I just think of the movie Independence Day anytime that comes up. I'm surprised that wasn't your virtual background. It is.
I just watched that the other day.
Yeah, it is a short week, which is fun and stressful at the same time. But here we are. We got to keep this weekly what's happening at Growth story continuing.
Speaking of what's happening at Growth, Katrina, how's your week been?
So it's fun to fit 5 days, not quite 5 days of work into 3, but no, things are grooving. The team is doing well. New month, new quarter, lined up perfectly on Monday on the 1st. Just talking about
couple
that
times
so
this year. I feel like that's happened a few every 5 years. You get a good year like this.
It's been good. We've been staying busy. The team's communicating well and doing great things.
That's awesome. Jason, how's your week going?
It's pretty hectic. Started pretty crappy, literally. Was not feeling well Sunday to Monday, but it happens. So we, adjust fire for effect and fill up Tuesday and Wednesday. This afternoon has taken off, but busy's good.
I can tell it's a short week because Slack is just message after message after message today. I'm surprised though I did not wake up this morning with a barrage of messages from Chris like I normally do. So that was a pleasant surprise.
I've been trying to work on that. So you're welcome. Thanks for seeing the change. No, there's a right and wrong way to communicate via Slack.
Perfect.
You need to get a digress button on that soundboard stat.
I was going to say we might need a mute button for me because one non-growth related work update is that our building is being like refaced and repainted. So if you see me dart out of this desk space, it's because someone's at my window and making a lot of noise. So
they've been working on that for a few days now. I think maybe they might need some Asana training.
It's a big project.
They need some communication training.
Yeah.
It wasn't, they said painting. There was a lot more that went into it than just painting, I think, but it's looking great. So the next time you come to visit, we'll have a fresh, great looking building.
Well, you're not going to top my 70s paneling in the background, so deal with it.
Hashtag deal with it.
Oh, I love it. So let's unpack some news for the week, and some of the stuff, it's not as controversial. I would say none of it is controversial this week. I saw some updates from HubSpot that I'm actually kind of giddy about, and I'm hoping you guys are too. Custom user properties. I think that's a pretty cool thing. I'm trying to think of different use cases for it, but we've got two really awesome HubSpot people here. What do you think of that?
I had a customer pop in my head as soon as you said that. Is before I think about who they are, and I just want to plug them on the recording, does this mean that we'll have the ability, or now have the ability to really customize even more functions at the user level? Because I know that's been a gap for some of our customers.
Yes, they've been making a lot of updates around user permissioning. I think now we can start to add details to the user, for example, employee birth dates, things like that. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So what was the use case that you thought of?
I have a memory of one of our customers with many people in their portal wanting more and less restrictive function based on the individual user. Approve an email, send an email, but probably more minor than that. Or maybe more major, depending on how you look at it. Am I being aloof enough yet specific enough to draw this conversation out of you?
Sure. So I think this specific update is a little different than the one you're describing, but basically being able to have an enhanced set of data that's specific to your HubSpot user. So another couple, instances of that is applying skills to users, being able to set up some more permissioning and admin control.
Awesome. So some
great. That's a big need. That's being able to further define is very important.
Yeah. And then the other one was, and this one was honestly my favorites in all the years of doing solutions architecting and building out workflows and automations for people. The one thing that grinded my gears is that you couldn't update associations between objects. That is now being released at the professional level, which I'm surprised they're not gatekeeping behind enterprise for once. So that was pretty cool.
Updating association labels, but we're not creating them. So we still have a place for the Happily app associate. I think still has its place.
Look at Aptitude 8 getting another plug. We're going to have to call Connor for sponsorship. Happy to see that's still doing its thing.
Nice. And then, so that's just labels? I thought from reading that it was you could do associations too.
Association labels, I might have totally just misspoke. So
It's okay.
I haven't
It's
even
okay.
seen it, so
Yeah.
It sounded great.
It was just news from like the 24th, so it's pretty new. So it's okay.
Chris,
And
Chris
then
doesn't let me read news. He doesn't let me leave my basement, in case you couldn't tell.
you're actually chained to your desk down there.
Yeah. Legit.
Day's not done yet.
That's right.
Oh boy. So I wanted to. That's all I had for news today. Honestly, it's been. I think
May I
it's
say
a
one
slow
piece
week
of
for
news
everyone. Yeah,
before we
yeah,
switch?
yeah.
So the reason I'm wearing a UCF rugby shirt is a much younger than I UCF rugby player is on the USA Sevens rugby team, so he's going to Paris.
Nice.
Malachi, pretty cool. I haven't put the shirt on for a while. Happy it fits, but that was pretty cool news. So if you're watching the Olympics and you see rugby and you see USA, obviously you're going to be, well, most of us are going to be sporting. And now, Rich, you have a reason to support USA Rugby too. Well, I guess not. Anyway, congrats, Malachi. Big deal. Big
Chris,
deal.
what else is going on in the news, Chris? I think I like when you share.
Just internationally?
Sure.
Just life news?
Just give me a
we
hard
don't
time.
have that
Weeks are
much
weird,
time.
Yeah. I don't know. Honestly, I usually am a news buff. I don't have a lot of great things to talk about, to be completely honest. So I'm gonna take a pause this week. It's been rough.
You're gonna. And Jason, you said you had some hot news to share.
I don't know if it's news. It's just a topic.
Okay, well let's hear it.
I don't get why there's still a delineation or a segmentation between a marketing department and a sales department. I don't get that. I remember 10 to 15 years ago, I applied for a job. Just one, and that was it. Not really. But this one in particular, they asked, well, are you more of a marketing person or a salesperson? I said, well, they go hand in hand. And I went on to blab about that for a while, but they came back and said, thanks, but no thanks. We're looking for someone that either does marketing or sales. And we need, the buzzword is RevOps, but how is there still that segmentation and then not even talking about service yet? It just drives me crazy. I was dealing with it an hour ago on an impromptu call, hence the reason I'm so prepared for this.
You're plenty prepared. The less prepared you are, I think, the more authentic I show up anyway. So to answer your question, the reason sales and marketing are still siloed separately is because people love dumb ass old rules. Marketing is crafting a message and putting it in front of something with the hope to get an action or with the function of getting an action. Sales is taking a particular conversation and moving through the actual process of selling something. So they are inherently different, but how? So I can see why these are siloed, but I do 100% agree that these could be one team with these just being role titles rather than having to be completely separate departments. It's a struggle. It's tough. We didn't have the tools many moons ago, and even up until recently that we have now, that just make communication and transparency a thing that just has never been able to be a thing like that before.
But what brought it top to mind for me is, we're working with this. We have this relationship right now with a partner that has multi-million dollars in their pipeline. And on the marketing side, we're driving a ton of new opportunity. But we can't get anything closed. And when the C-suite comes in and says, hey, why aren't we getting stuff closed? What's going on? All of a sudden we got the salespeople on board and they're not responding. They're not picking it up and going. So it really needs to be that, it sounds corny, but that synergistic relationship to keep it moving.
Have you revisited their SLAs between the two groups? If your marketing efforts, right, you're like putting all these people in front of them, right? Like what's their agreement from the sales side of things to get in touch and actually qualify, return data back to the marketing team on whether or not these are good leads. Like
That
that.
is a great point.
So, and I mean, you're talking about a particular customer, but it is a really common thing for marketing to generate opportunity and sales not to move on it. Then you have the conversation of like, well, those leads weren't qualified. Then it's like, well, what makes a qualified lead? I have a feeling I know who you're referring to, and I'm assuming we do ABM for them. So the pipeline we're generating is based off of companies and contacts of those companies that were pre-qualified based off of different characteristics about them. So sales should be more on top of those follow-ups. Company culture, gamifying the SLA. There's a few ways that you can help fix the problem.
We can now publish the shortest Wikipedia page ever of when do you follow up on an inbound lead right now. Don't wait a day. Don't wait 3 days. Don't wait a month. This is a telephone. They're smaller now. They're portable. You can, hello, hi mom. I don't know what the problem is. Not that there's a problem.
There's a quote that I like, and Chris, you can steal this one too. Speed kills leads. Just that simple.
Been saying that for years. We have this thing, Jason, where Richard says things that are actually what I've been saying all along, and then reality, they're like, he's got some really good one-liners, and I try to steal them, and I fumble it, as us Americans would say.
At least you're trying.
We do have football in Canada, you know.
Well, whatever. Canadian League, though.
Yeah. But back to what Jason was saying, I think it's good to segue into really understanding the journey of the customer and mapping that out, and then also putting together the blueprint for what that handoff looks like. Who's responsible? What do they need? So on and so forth. And you've made some pretty cool maps on that stuff. Yeah.
Literally behind him is a map.
I didn't even get that at first. I thought he was raising his hand.
No, he's clever. You got to see in between. So this is on Spotify too, Jason. So you have to verbalize your physical movements. So I am pointing at a map.
Hello.
We do have video on Spotify.
Oh, that's right. You're
referencing world map.
Yeah.
When you're mapping out customer journeys, and we looked at a Harvard Business Review article recently. The way people are engaging with companies today is different than, again, any other point in time. Savvy companies are making it easier to communicate and opening up more channels for communication. But behind this, which is like the easiest part of that to change, but then the behind the scenes function sometimes gets overlooked. And then you end up in this kerfuffle communication snafu, and it becomes a nightmare on the back end. And Katrina is looking at me, and I feel like she is saying something with her eyes. Is there anything that you would agree or potentially disagree with what I just said?
No critiques. It was a really interesting article. They described it as an echoverse because now, it's so much more complex to be putting messages out to not just customers. They are now referring to them as actors in this article, which I thought was really interesting because we used to consider like contacts or viewers or audiences, and they've introduced this language of actors because in this world that includes AI, possibly like robotic bot, participants, where these messages can be amplified based on all of these other engagements that they're rolled up into that new phrase of echoverse. So I thought that was really interesting and definitely turns a lot of that, simple messaging on its head.
Every time I think of a
salespeople follow up.
customer journey mapping is I like to think of it as like a storyboard, like they're pitching a movie and you see this action scene and it's drawn out with caricatures, and I just want to do that. I think it'd be cool sometime, but
I mean, I think with
Fully
ChatGPT, you
animated
can do a
customer
lot.
journey.
right.
I like that idea. We should take those buyer journey maps and throw them into ChatGPT and storyboard it.
I mean,
Pretty
it's no
cool.
Harvard Business Review, but it's going to look pretty darn cool.
What an epic
One
way to
day.
personify the customer's challenges and really see that hero's journey come to life. I love it.
I used to work with a brand guy. I love the work that he did too, because he would actually doodle out all the little thoughts and ideas as you're going through these branding exercises and defining company culture and all of that and how you need to do business. So you would get like a buyer journey map, and it was all hand drawn stuff. The problem with that was that it just took too long to get done.
Yeah, it sounds very fun, but
Yeah,
non-functional.
exactly. I think like for me, when I was doing buyer journey mapping, the phrase I used was the best soap opera. So thinking of it as that old school soap opera, what's the turning moment?
Gaston. I don't know why that's the name that popped in my head, but I feel like that's a good soap opera name.
And it's an interesting way to kind of stress test systems too. Like soap operas are known for being like the most dramatic, like over the top. So if you really take like all of those moments, like amplified and solve around what those biggest things would be,
Like-
that's an interesting internal stress test for a process.
Like the
Telenovela
California
style.
telenovela. No offense.
But I mean, going back to like the root conversation of when marketing generates an opportunity and the SLA is that a salesperson reaches out to talk to them. And when they do that, the actor or potential customer or lead just doesn't respond right away. You should have an internal process to allow the salesperson to continue to follow up so that the deal does end up happening or not happening. Marketing shouldn't be generating non-actual leads because that just gets confusing and frustrating. And then sales, again, SLA should be doing more than the bare minimum in order to have another conversation. And today we know that almost everything, including a request to meet, needs to be packaged in a beautiful little, I don't know, brownie or something, so it's easy to eat and no one has any negative feelings. So I think cupcake was originally what I was thinking, but
Brownie.
our job when we're on the marketing side is to just manage up and let them know, and then try to empower them with the tools to be successful, as one does.
We've talked a lot about marketing and sales in this conversation so far. What about service? How does that play in? Because that's, I think, a big missing that I've seen over the years is, okay, we've got the lead in, we've got the sale, now what? And then that's where the ball gets dropped.
Service is a lot less fun to talk about, I think, is one of the problems.
I'm
They
so
don't get
class
enough.
talking about service. I'll bore you to tears talking about service.
Well, that's what I'm thinking is maybe there's less active voices out there like really hitting it, because it is such a mountain to climb to get a new customer. But then just like you've been on a hike where you're like, okay, cool. When I get to the top of this hill, everything's downhill. And as soon as you do, you're like, there's another mountain in front of me. Where did that thing even come from? I feel like that's kind of how companies feel about focusing on customer service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think there's some exciting things that are coming out recently in the HubSpot space to help manage account health and start to, gauge those elements. But all of that, comes from a team that's curious and interested, dare I say, like obsessed with their customers and their experience. And so by wanting to, receive feedback, by wanting to investigate indicators of how are your customers doing with your product or service, like that's where it begins. then we can start to capture those data points and then build systems to maintain or improve, the experience. I'm actually working with a service team who is moved over to HubSpot, but it's now that they have this new software, we're revealing that some of our challenges don't live on the software side. It's, about kind of retooling how issues are distributed, how work is, managed, or how customers are managed individually. And so there's a lot of decision making that's happening within those teams. And it's high stakes stuff on the service side because those are your customers. Everyone does care. They want to give that best experience, but that can almost create a lot of pressure to make changes to that area because the customer is so close to, any of those processes. It's not like marketing where you guys can put out another post, another something, right? And it's a little bit more of a volume game. We're so, sometimes with service things, it's so cautious because the customer's right there.
What a named nuance I hadn't considered, because it is true in marketing. Even though some people can get very worked up over crafting a perfect message or a post for one time, everyone is getting barraged with marketing messages so frequently, just at a rate we'll never be used to. Nobody cares about the marketing message. If it lands, it lands. If it doesn't, it's out of everyone's mind. With service, you're stuck in that relationship for potentially years and years. I hadn't really thought about it that way.
You look at service, and the most important thing to me, by the way, I'm guessing, Rich, they're not going to be able to see this at home when they're watching, but in the top left corner of my screen, I have a vent, and there's a little record flashing light, and I thought that was a camera for a minute. I'm like, who put a camera? Chris, you put a camera down here?
I tagged in your wife, and I said, hey, listen, Jason's a great guy, but his Asana tracking is just miserable. I got to get in there and see what he's doing.
That's service.
You're spending too much time working outside.
Yeah.
Anyway, though, service is all about maintaining the trust that's already been established. And it's the most important thing to continue to foster a very healthy relationship and not over service. And, even in the marketing world, nothing should be a surprise. Things should be planned out. It's not like, your campaign has a heart attack. You should be prepared for that in some way. And, your client should feel comfortable with you, comfortable enough that they can reach out and get a proper answer. And a lot of times I hear people all the time not giving the wrong answer. And part of that service is what is done back to your client or customer. And it needs to be what's best for them. And things just work out that way, regardless of if your employer puts a camera in your house.
And we've all seen it done well. We all have purchased items online and received an update when the order was received and when the next step is received. It's not like these systems aren't in place. We deal so much in B2B senses, but in the example that Katrina was sharing, that is a B2C situation. It's like the tools do exist. Processes likely need to change. That is never fun and rarely cheap, but the focus should be on the customer. They could be a student. They could be all sorts of different things. But if you go through all this work to market and then sell somebody a thing, and then you drop on service, you have to play that battle over time after time after time after time. And that is having bad customer service is a huge block to a company growing, which is why it's such a core element of growth operations.
No. You ever had to fire a customer because they were too much?
Only very seldom. Very rarely has there been. Is this call recorded?
No, they're just little cameras up in the corner.
Yeah, there's cameras everywhere.
Right? I mean, that's its own challenge. Just to speak to what you mentioned about the maintaining trust, and there's a phrase. Is it a phrase or is it just known? You have a great experience, right? You might tell one or two people. if you have like a horrible experience,
Oh,
you will scream it from the rooftops, right?
Yeah.
So, that's also kind of the nature of it is, sure, you might have if there is a, customer service issue, it can be amplified. And, we fight so hard to get those like positive relationships, positive reviews, all of those things. So anytime there's a threat to that, image, company reputation, it definitely takes a team who's attentive to be able to resolve any of those types of escalations, but having systems in place to, respond to them in a human way, in an empathetic way, doing what's right, doing the next right thing, keeping the customer aware of what that next thing is going to be. It can be pretty simple, but it's not always obvious.
and it's not always about the
Katrina,
team being attentive either. Like it's the company's responsibility to, yes, hire attentive people that can physically do the work, but also to support them with processes, with documentation, with resources when it's appropriate, and the tools to do a really good job.
Hmm.
It's a real thing that people need to focus on, which is why it's one of
Yeah.
our things.
Well, and I think
It's
too
a
is
thing.
a lot aren't actually mapping out the customer journey, so the after the buy. So what happens? And I know I've shared this chart with a few of you internally, but it's like first stage new client, next stage first impression, first value, intended value, sustained value, increased value. What happens at each of those points on that axis of time? Because if that first impression sucks, the entire relationship's at risk all the way through. It doesn't matter how good the experience becomes after that. If it's shit at the beginning, you've always got that. And then your relationship's over. And then what's happening during that onboarding period within those first 3 to 6 months? And, internally, we should be looking at how do we increase our footprint, but ultimately, how can we do a good job? And that's going to result in an increased footprint, right? So I think businesses should take a moment to map out the post sale, the client journey of what's actually going to happen.
I
so
can
hold on. You guys
attest.
see all the
Go ahead.
trash in the back? I just realized that it's not just a little sliver. Look at all that mess I have back there.
No one is going to notice if you don't let them notice. You're going to be fine. But for anybody watching, click on Jason's image and expand the photo. You
Don't
can't do
look
that.
at
You're
me.
safe.
You're safe.
You're fine. You get a little face view. I can tell you from being I am a marketing salesperson, right? I was a marketing first person, and then very much a salesperson as my next person. Um, Selling is hard, obviously. Marketing is hard, but I could never deal with the pressure of truly being in a service position, telling companies how to change. I could never deal with it. And I don't know if I've ever said this just point blank, but very thankful for the effort and energy that the service team, Katrina, Jason, everybody is doing. I just couldn't. I don't mind myself putting myself out there to get a sale, but then to maintain that expectation through good times and bad is just a real. It's just unbelievable. So thank you so much for for doing that. That's actually the point for
Stop
the
it.
show. It's just for me to thank you and
Stop,
remind myself
Chris.
how ignorant I am. So this is good.
Stop.
And
We
then to
have a
see your
great
real
team.
background. Yeah.
What I mean, like, hey, heads up. Join a Riverside chat. It's the first time. Whatever.
I love the background. I think it's great.
So,
Deal with it.
Yeah, more customer journey for everybody. That sounds like a fun content piece. I think it's been a minute since we've written anything up on the blog service related, so maybe this is a moment of inspiration for us.
Let's do it.
I think going back to what Chris you just said is it is very difficult because through the good and bad, again, that trust goes both ways. So when your client or customer, there is something bad happening, be honest. Hey, customer, hey, client, this really sucks. This isn't going to work. You can't have this. We can't deliver this, whatever it may be. But provide solutions. right? Don't just gripe about it and say, you know what, but there are other things that we can provide. There are different avenues of approach that we can take. And that, I think that trust and honesty goes a long way. Gandhi's fine, but
isn't it tricky to take two strangers and to get them to a point where they can trust each other with the good and the bad? I mean, that really is probably another unspoken about like relationship dynamic that's really hard. I have said in the past that the relationships that I've found that are strongest are not the ones that are all rainbows and unicorns, but they are the relationships that did see some sort of friction and then solved for the friction. And the bigger the friction, usually the better the relationship of overcoming it. It's.
I agree. I'm married.
God, you were so much friction. Unbelievable. No, it's true. I think, yeah. So there's going to be something that's going to add some friction, Jason, so we can work on strengthening how we work together. But in most cases, since you did find a kink in my armor, in most cases, overcoming something difficult is a relationship grower. That's my 2 cents.
I'm not going to touch that whole last comment. I'll take that off. I'll take that off.
Come on, get real. Put it out here.
Yeah, this is your chance.
I like where I work.
I love it.
So, are we not supposed to have tequila or something? Did I miss that?
I'm not going to answer that one.
I would say that as long as you're not on the clock.
I don't know.
On the clock. Do whatever you want, man. This is a fireside chat. This is just like talk about it, and then like, hey, it's also the dawn of a 4-day weekend. So your independence starts now, my man. Do whatever.
This isn't a gallon of water, Jason.
That's so rich.
A gallon of tequila.
Oh my god!
Liter of cola.
Liter of cola.
A liter of cola.
Greatest movie of all time. All right, so customer journey mapping. What are essential HubSpot reports for growth? What do you need?
Are we just naming all of the KPIs across all of? Is this a pop quiz on our KPIs for?
Yeah, this is a test. I want to test you all. No, I mean there's obviously the baseline that we want to make sure every client has. How should they be looking at these reports? What reports should be there? What's going to help them see if they're being successful in what they're doing or not?
From my point of view, there really isn't any. It's just whenever someone's like, Katrina's like, hey, what's going on with these hours? What are you doing, you dingus? Stop working so much. And I go, okay, yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
just wait until things set fire.
I'm usually the one building them in someone else's portal. So that's a really very different point of view. But it goes back to what are your measurements? What are your service levels, sales levels? What are those important metrics that I'm sure Katrina was just about to share?
10 out of 10 segue. So like if we're tracking, obviously tracking volume of tickets, if we're tracking the types of inquiries, it depends on the type of service or success department that we're working with. But in general, we're categorizing tickets by, the nature of the request, or if it's an onboarding planned, post-sale action. So we're tracking the volume of tickets, the time it takes to manage those tickets. HubSpot automatically does a great job showing user activities, so we can start to identify trends over time or within teams around, who's the most active, who's maybe the least active. Also taking a look at any trends that are specific to organizations. So if you have multiple locations, knowing what's your strongest office, there's so many things that each individual company is going to pay attention to, but it's
Mm.
basically making visible any of those factors that are going to help them, know where more attention is needed or when to get the confetti and the tequila going because everybody just, hit their best numbers ever.
Those are
Love
my
it.
favorite moments.
The one that I really love that you added recently on the tickets was the scoring for communication with the client. Like how we scored the client. That is a metric. I think these are things that people need to start thinking outside the box on because it helps me as a marketer on the marketing team where we can look at that against our ideal customer profile and go, well, this client doesn't really fit because they've scored very low on their communication back to us and things like that. So I think that's a metric that should be there. What are some, like, what drove that? What are some additional ideas that you're tinkering or with to bring into growth? Let's talk about that.
Sure. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that's well received. I put a lot of thought into that. It initially started because I was building out a matrix for how we evaluate growth communication to the client, how well we meet our SLAs and, what that looks like. And some of the things that we've, encountered, especially with these projects that can be 12 weeks long, they can be a year long. There's a lot of ways that delays happen, and especially for maybe some of those shorter projects, 2, 3 days delay, not a big deal. But once you hit a week of delay, those are some things that, people have to really work to make up some of that time, or we start having projects that lag. So growth is prepared on our side to, step in and mitigate any of those timeline risks. But if the client isn't able to participate or kind of hold up their end of the deal, that's where things can really get challenging. So being able to know when, you know, we have some agreements in place around what participation and what, who's responsible for what. And so when those agreements are broken, that's where we have a hard time maybe achieving the 110% of what we'd hope to. That's when maybe our scope of work can be impacted. Timelines are definitely impacted.
I wonder if there's
Katrina,
if after a while of having this new information, we'll be able to identify potential correlation and causation around the type of customers and the type of communication that we get back from them, and then tie that into like a lovely conversation I'd love to have called the best target account list for account-based marketing. And when I suggest that to companies, looking at the service side of things to find which companies work best with you as well, because it makes it a lot easier to sell if you can name that as part of why. And maybe we'll also identify, hey, a certain type of customer fits within these parameters and are also like our least happy customers and our least favorite to work with. And then that could also be part of the conversation a company would take into building their best target account list. So it's just nice to just hear. I don't get to hear everything all the time. It's cool to hear you've made some changes and I'm already classic schmarketer. Like, ooh, how can I use this new information to sell more stuff? Very cool.
I like back to Katrina, what you said about being able to measure that communication between, a client, a customer, and an agency or a HubSpot partner. As a HubSpot partner, you can't. Your client or customer can ignore you for a week. You can't ignore them. You have to let them know and be on top of them. And we learned the hard way. Thanks, Amy, if you're watching. I'm joking. It was me. Set a fire went over the bow.
Yeah, that was Jason. Referring to Jason.
That was me. It's you just can't miss 1 week. They can go quiet, but you can't, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
So it's a nice metric that was put together.
The chase.
Yeah.
It's all about the chase. We keep showing up just like sales shows up to that lead until they literally get told off or it hits that cutoff where you've got to call it, dead in the water. Once someone's, a client, I'll be in your inbox at least once a week. If we've got something that's pending, you're going to be hearing from growth until you literally tell us like, hey, I'm taking a vacation. Leave me alone until this date. But then you're going to hear from us on that date. We'll paddle up to your yacht there.
Since this conversation has dabbled in sales and marketing and service, that reality of managing up is just starting to filter its way into our sales process. And I don't think is anywhere on our marketing process. We've had encounters with companies. Jason, you and I worked on this project where some of the feedback, large SaaS and B2B platform in one, specifically commented that this was the first time they'd entered into a vendor situation where it didn't end up creating more work for that department, sales and marketing teams, that they could rely on a consultant or a team to get the work that they talked about done instead of just pointing and saying, wouldn't it be nice if you guys did that? Maybe there's a way we can, record us talking about this. Maybe we can turn it into a clip, and then maybe I can package it into a marketing message or drip it into my sales conversations.
You want to take it from the top?
If only we had a way to record conversations.
If all of these conversations should be recorded.
I have a camera in my office, so I'm always recording.
You're welcome.
All right, so I got another metric, and I don't know if it technically qualifies. There's enough tomfoolery in this call for the day. It's more of, I guess it's kind of a metric. It's a KPI. It's lead scoring, right? God. Which is seriously overlooked. It's going to be mentioned in an upcoming webinar of the top 10 workflows you must have in HubSpot, or depending on when you're watching this, it's already over. Right? I may have got hit by a bus, but it was okay. I survived. I don't know. Anyway, lead scoring, it's so imperative that it's set up. It's a way that you can monitor where in the sales, the marketing, and there's got to be a way that we can set that up as a customer score that brings us back to what Katrina has built.
I'd love a smarter pixel on that email tracking element, because I do get the sense with some of our different clients' email providers that pixel's not always getting picked up. It's always also on our wish list to actually know like which email recipient is getting those emails. But that's a huge indicator for us. Like there's a lot that happens in between weekly calls. And so when we're asking for things in between meetings, if the information that we're distilling isn't getting we get the hunch when it's not getting interacted with. And man, it's a real, I would say that there's definitely some customer health indicators that we could establish.
I agree.
When you have a product, it's great. If you've got, your own software where you're able to monitor usage and behavioral events and things like that. It's a little bit trickier when you're on outside of that space.
There was a feature in a CRM that I used before HubSpot. I think it was called Base or Get Base. And it would analyze the communication between you and your customer. And it would tell you if you, from the sales end, it would tell you if you're at risk of losing the deal. On the service end, it would say you're at risk of losing the client. I'd love to see something like that come over to HubSpot. And especially with all the AI tools out there now, it shouldn't be too hard to implement something like that. I mean, I've built an AI bot that looks at my email and tells me when I need to respond to one or not. So theoretically, you could apply the same practice to coach yourself on client engagement and sales engagement.
I attempted to make a sentiment scoring function within HubSpot for one of our clients they had a specific set of keywords that we were searching in either the title or the body conversation inbox. that if it contained one of those, that it would be either prioritized or however they would manage those differently. But sentiment scoring would be such a huge win, especially for customer service, team members who, especially if you're in a more of a help desk type role, to be able to triage within your inbox and knowing what you're stepping into when you sit in for the day, that you are able to, tackle those hottest communications first, would be huge. Could be just a little color icon, red, yellow, green, or a little happy face, little emoji in the corner of your, email if you're getting praise versus if somebody's, expressing
Frustration.
some frustration. Yeah.
Katrina, what was there was that software that you and I came across with one of our clients that would read their social reactions. Like you put a
Crystal ball.
post.
Oh, right.
No,
It was one of our government clients that utilized that more for social listening.
Yeah.
And the tool was called something with water.
Ooh.
Now this is going to turn into a game of charades. 2 syllables sounds like.
I love it. I now have an idea walking away from this conversation of going into HubSpot's workflows, building a custom coded action that ties into ChatGPT and does sentiment analysis for us.
That would be such a fun project.
It's just going to be green flags all the way, baby. Our customers love us. I don't know if that'll be as helpful for us as I could see that in like a higher ticket, higher volume situation just being really imperative. Because you brought up AI, Rich, and because I really appreciate Katrina's stance on intentional human contact points.
Mm-hmm.
When you receive an email, some people have kind of like a tonality in the way that they write emails that may, to a human, come off a certain way, right? But maybe they're just being clear and concise and not wanting to add emotion to it. I wonder if having an AI tool that automates sentiment from the first reaction would be as valuable as like maybe a tool that manages post, like suggest to the service agent, here's how you respond based on the conversation rather than just that initial email, and have an intentional human touch point for that first interaction before you start bringing in the robots. Does that seem like that would?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of it should have a human touch point. As I think we said it in the last episode, it's about augmentation, not replacing, right? So how do you keep that human behavior? And like I called it Donna AI because I love the show Suits, and Donna's like the ultimate EA. And it would read the emails. It would prepare a draft based on the conversation thread, beginning and throughout, and prepare a draft and send me a Slack notification saying, hey, I've used your style guide to write this email. Please have a look and add your 2 cents to it. And then I can go into my email and write and continue that. The reason I didn't push further with that was precisely what we're talking about right now is you become lazy because you've farmed this work out, and you at some point will run into a situation where you have no idea what the customer is talking about because you do not recall it because didn't do any thinking. So I think it's like you've got to be able to look at it and then have some kind of augmentation that allows you to start the process or at least get some thoughts out, almost like a coach. I don't know if that answers the question.
I like the coaching plugin. That idea makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Which
Augmentation.
HubSpot has some features available to offer to, try to make things sound more friendly, more humorous.
Yeah.
Like there's a little bit of that. At first I thought you were starting to describe Grammarly, because they'll tell you if you sound a little.
Yeah, I mean, My wife is the opposite of me in terms of tone. I'm a more compassionate tone. I might ramble on a little bit, where my wife is very direct and it can come off as brash. So she'll use ChatGPT to smoothen out her edges, things like that. So I think tools like that is like really understanding who you're talking to on the other end as a human being and understanding how they communicate and talking back to them the way that they feel. And I think that that's something that AI can do really well for people and really manage up our communications.
I could
So
totally see. Oh, go ahead, Jason.
For those that are unable to see Rich on screen, he has been blinking SOS this entire time. So I think Mike may have. Okay, we'll get you, buddy. I can't. I'm chained up.
Hey, sorry. Changed up, camera on. We know what's happening.
She takes great humor in that aspect that she sometimes has to do that. And she'll even run it by me like, is this too brash? I don't know. Throw it in ChatGPT and see what it says. And then it comes out, no, that's too nice. That doesn't sound like me at all.
Rich, going back to what you said, it's great that we have AI and we can load these personas in and we can do all that. But you really need to be intelligent enough to identify the jobs that need to be done, to identify that and to be human about it. For now, I mean, I don't know. Robots are going to be laughing at us in 20 years watching this.
I think there was a guy named Christopher Knoll, and he said to me on one of these episodes that you have to be a good communicator to use AI.
And if you're not, it'll make you better. I think my communication has improved since using ChatGPT. I think that's for me. I feel better about communicating thanks to having interacted with the robot. The more specific I am about my request, the more the result ends up being within the realm of what I was looking for. That if I'm just like, help me audit a thing, help me create an executive statement about X without who's the person, what's the end goal.
I mean,
still
those are
human.
those are our, those are our fundamentals, around communication, right? So that's why like intake for customer service is such a massive, important factor, right? Because we can't put that ticket or that request in front of the right person if we don't have the full story. So getting complete information from the customer is the first step. If we're talking about an issue, what browser are you in? What device are you using, right? Depending if we're in tech support land or, whatever that looks like, asking for photos, right? If it's the damaged thing that showed up in shipping, there's all this intake so that the company can effectively respond to you. So I think the ChatGPT and the AI tools are just kind of reminding about how important it is that our requests are clear and specific, that we're providing the context and the full information about the situation. And then that whole idea brings us just back to the importance of having that well-managed, well-maintained CRM, right? Because that's where the context about the customer, the history, are you going to respond the same way if they've had the issue the 10th time versus the first time they've had the issue? They're going to, come to the team differently if it's the 10th time something, like that's happened versus the first time. So like context, all of that is like, it's alive and well. We need it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that our kids they could major in AI prompt engineering?
Oh yeah.
And
I hope they're a good communicator.
Kids, not just the four of us, like in general.
That is now a job. It wasn't 2 years ago, and I'm quite honestly have considered in the process of considering some sort of business unit at growth that offers kind of an expert to go in, scope a particular growth operations, sales, marketing, service, look at a particular area, understand their team, and then suggest specific tools and specific processes to empower the team in general from an AI perspective. I think that's valuable. The reality for me is that AI, when used as augmentation, helps employees do more better within the same finite resource of their time, which should allow companies to be more profitable, which should allow companies to pay the team members more, which should really fuel a new cycle of just the ability for us to live happy, healthy lives, at least within like our unique keyhole of the universe. So I'm very pro using these tools and investing in the software and the training and personnel.
I think one of the things you said there is really important to really emphasize too is in using AI to augment your employees so you can pay them more. What I'm seeing on the trend is using AI to replace employees. And I don't like seeing that at all, because what's going to happen when those bots break down?
So my argument is there's been a lot of dead weight at a lot of companies, and the people that are these sort of tools help shine the light on that. And if your SLA with your employer isn't they're doing good to you and you're doing good to them, and like, I don't mind putting this on the internet, and then a robot is able to highlight that you've been half-assing it, like, I mean, it is what it is. Be honest with yourself. But we don't need to think that way. We take the time to find what I would argue the best human beings with the highest level of skill for the roles that we hire at Growth. And then we only want to make them better, both in their personal life and at work. And one of the ways we can do that at Growth is find new tools, give you the time and the resources to train on those tools, and then let you do your thing. Not all companies hire that way. There's a board, there's a profitability margin, there's all these arguably dumb metrics that influence the decision making of who you hire and why you hire them and yada yada yada. But I am pro AI. I am pro hiring really good humans and investing in them and paying them more. I know I have 3 on this call hearing me say that out loud, but I think we can all vouch for it.
I think that's got to be a call in and of itself. Just how to build a team like Growth. It's difficult. It's expensive. It takes intuition. It takes investment. But back to what Rich said, number one, I'm surprised you get paid for your job, and number 2, it's Skynet.
Oh yeah.
Well, there's a reason I haven't had my haircut in 3 years. You guys are expensive. This is $75 a month saved. I'm just like reinvesting. That's what this is. This is my Bitcoin.
Nice.
Well, with all that said, we're coming up on the hour. Is there anything anybody wants to say before ending this fabulous discussion?
I could think of something.
I'll close with free Jason glass.
Yes. My Independence Day today.
Well,
Happy birthday, America, tomorrow.
There we go.
USA, baby. Thank you for coming on, sharing your insights, all those things. It's really enjoyable. I'm getting choked up.
I'm glad I got to do it at least once.
It's just hard to see you in your true setting, Jason. Honestly, I just didn't realize how tough it was up in Michigan.
Yeah.
Skynet.
And with that,
an AI basement builder.
Hey,
I love it.
Right?
There we go. With that, thank you everybody for joining and tuning in to another episode of That's Growth Ops. Thank you, Katrina and Jason, for being here. I got to take my dog to the vet.
Good luck. Thanks, Rich.
Little dog.
Look at that.
I don't want to talk about it. Clean it up.
Hey, get me a drink.